Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I'm back for a video that I'm surprised I haven't done yet. You all have been loving the video that I did with my mother recently about her comfort reads, and I looked through my videos and realized I've never made a video about my comfort reads. So I pulled together a list. This is by no means an exhaustive list because honestly, I'm not a huge rereader, but these are books that I either enjoy going back to often or even just thinking about them brings me peace and coziness and that little bit of comfort. So my first, my major, and my forever comfort read will always be Jane Austen. Any Jane Austen. I think Pride and Prejudice and Emma in particular, because those are my favorites. Those are the ones that I know the best and that I feel the most at home in. But honestly, she's just perfect. Her work is so safe and familiar, and there are risks, there are stakes, but I know what they are. And so therefore it doesn't feel like there's really any danger. And it's just a little bit of home. Then going all the way back to my childhood, and a childhood favorite that I do like to revisit every now and again is Paddington by Michael Bond. I have adored these books since I was about 5 years old, and even as an adult there is something just so winning and so sweet about Paddington. They're stories of finding a family, finding a home, and that you can make a mess of things, as Paddington often does, but it's okay, it's all going to turn out in the end, and there's an enormous amount of comfort in that. I particularly love these editions because they have the lovely pen and ink illustrations, and you can tell how old this one is if we look at my handwriting when I wrote my name in the front cover. A middle grade book that I actually read recently, but that is also a huge comfort read, is Pages and Company. This entire series is a wonderful comfort read, and it's a series by Anna James. The first in particular, I think, would be my ultimate comfort read, and it's Tilly and the Book Wanderers. It's about a young girl named Tilly who lives with her grandparents who own a bookstore, and she discovers that they are book wanderers, which means that characters can step out of the pages of their favorite books and talk to them, but that they can also step into books and experience them that way. What more could you want? That is every book lover's dream. Honestly, that is the way that I felt and still feel about books. And even though I'm sad that these didn't exist when I was 11 or 12 years old, I'm really glad they exist now, even as an adult. I also love the way they play with the text on the page, such as this moment where Alice has batted at her name and knocked it askew. How fabulous is that? Two other young adult reads that are utterly comforting. First is the Bloody Jack series by L.A. Meyer. I grew up with these. I read them throughout high school and throughout college. And they're the story of Mary Faber, who decides to take on the identity of a boy named Jack and join the Navy as a cabin boy. And it takes place in Regency, England, which is fantastic. Jackie has so many incredible adventures. She's a very flawed character, but you love her nonetheless. And even though there are serious risks and stakes in these novels, you know everything is going to turn out well for Jackie in the end. It's just a question of how. So there's exciting adventure, but it's not terrifyingly so. Plus, there's the comfort of she loves to sing and perform, and a lot of these songs I grew up hearing in Scottish and Irish folk music, so that brings an extra element of comfort to me when I read them. Another book that I read in high school, or another series rather, is Anything by Louise Renison. Everyone knows Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging and the whole Georgia Nicholson series. I haven't heard as many people talk about this series, which I think I maybe prefer just a little bit, at least based on my memories, which is the Tights series, which is about Tallulah Casey, who is Georgia Nicholson's cousin. And Tallulah goes to a performing arts school in Yorkshire, has a thing about wearing tights, and when she gets herself in an awkward situation, will spontaneously pretend to Irish dance. And it's just hilarious. Her observations at night staring out her bedroom window are things that we don't want to admit that we all thought about when we were 14, but we definitely all did. And I think that's what makes them so comforting and so funny, is that you don't want to admit that you were like this, but you probably were. And everything turned out fine in the end, so it's gonna be okay now. Another great book, if you just need a good laugh, I always turn to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I haven't read the rest of the series. I tried another book, but it didn't grab me nearly as much as this one did. I love just the utter ridiculousness of it, and yet it's grounded in such truth. It's very much like Monty Python, and that they're just in these outlandish situations, and yet there's a kind of logic there. There is a real world parallel to this behavior. And so whenever I feel that the world has just completely lost its mind, reading this makes me feel slightly better about things. This next one I'm calling new adults because I think they're geared at slightly older young adults, or indeed full-on adults. And those are the 5-ish books that Eva Ibbotson wrote for young adults and adults. I pulled out this one, The Reluctant Heiress, which I think in the UK is called Magic Flutes. I also love almost all of the others, A Countess Below Stairs, A Company of Swans. Those I think are my favorites, but they are utterly perfect. They're all historical romances that tend to take place in the early part of the 20th century, usually in either England or Vienna or some combination of the two. This one is about Tessa, who has a job in the costume department of a Viennese opera company, but is secretly a countess who owns this great manor/castle out in the countryside, and this rich Englishman comes out and wants to buy her family home. She and her 2 aunts are in dire straits. They're not sure if they can financially keep this castle anymore. So they're very tempted to sell to him, but Tessa is determined she's not going to give up this family home. And a romance develops between her and Guy, but then there's the small matter of his fiancée. These books are always utterly charming. The cast of characters are wonderful. Her heroines are dreamy, but also very practical and very resilient. There are wonderful families that are made here. Sometimes real families, but often found families, and they are just utterly perfect. They will sweep you away. Again, there are stakes, but everything turns out well in the end, no matter what the stakes are, and there's so much comfort in that. Other romances that always grab me, I always turn to Venetia by Georgette Heyer. I haven't read much Georgette Heyer, but this one is my particular favorite, especially the audiobook read by Richard Armitage. That audiobook is technically abridged, but to me it's still perfect. It doesn't leave out anything of huge importance. You can still follow the storyline perfectly. Everything makes perfect sense. And it's just the most wonderful piece. It's about Venetia, who's a young woman who's grown up in Yorkshire. Her parents have both died. Her mother died when she was very young. Her father died more recently. And so she is living there with her younger brother, who does have a physical disability. And their older brother is away fighting in the Napoleonic Wars. But soon, Lord Damerel moves back into the manor next door, which he has not done for ages. He was always sort of the ogre in tales that their nurses would tell them as children, as, being an utter rake. But then, after a chance meeting with Venetia, she begins to charm him. And it's almost a Beauty and the Beast type of story, but with a few Regency twists along the way. I would say they are definitely intellectual equals for each other, and it's just perfect. And especially the way Richard Armitage vocally characterizes each of the characters makes everything just perfect. I love going into Venetia. And my last comfort read has to be the Poldark series by Winston Graham. I started with the television show, but then immediately went to the books, and I kept up with the books as the show came out. I just finished the series last year, and I honestly want to do a reread at some point, but there are so many new books that I want to read as well. I don't know. But here again, it's a wonderful cast of characters, some real family, some found family. But even though there are high stakes, everything is so familiar. I know exactly how they're all going to react to every situation. And even if there's drama, I know that things will probably turn out well in the end. If you somehow missed this series, this is about Ross Poldark, who was rather a daredevil, a bit of a bad boy growing up. And so he ends up being conscripted into the army for a time and goes off to America to fight in the Revolutionary War, comes back to discover that his father has died. He has inherited the estate, which is in utter disrepair, and that his childhood sweetheart is now engaged to his cousin Francis. And this kicks off a huge series of events. It's mostly in small town Cornwall between the 1780s and the 1810s. They do journey to London at a variety of points. There are small moments that take place in France, but every single character is so perfectly drawn that it feels like going home when I open these books. I still haven't made it to Cornwall yet, but I desperately want to because of how much I love this series and how much it has made me love Cornwall. So there you have it. Those are some books that I turn to or think about whenever I'm having a really rough time. Let me know down below what are some of your comfort reads if you didn't already tell me on my mother's video. And give me some more recommendations of other books that you think might fit my comfort read profile based on the ones I've told you about today. Until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.